Hey Thrivers, you're listening to Season 2, Episode 19.
Today, we're talking about sleep with certified sleep coach Eva Klein, owner of My Sleeping Baby and founder of the Sleep Bible. If you've got little ones that are up before the crack of dawn or a newborn that hasn't mastered sleeping more than a few hours at a time yet, you will want to take down some notes because Eva is an expert and she's here to share some practical ways to help your little ones get more rest so that you can too.
As busy moms, we need it, especially when we're juggling a million things or trying to run a business from home. I know that I count on nap time every afternoon to get things done and feel refreshed. Without it, I'm not at my best and neither are my girls. We invite you to keep listening as we dive into all things sleep today, along with some of our favorite sleep-related products for babies and toddlers.
Welcome to The Thrive, a podcast for working moms. This is for all the women and moms listening. If you work from home, in an office, run your own business, or are the CEO of your family, this podcast is for you. Because at the end of the day, all moms are working moms. Rachel and Christine invite you to celebrate the victories, get advice, listen to their mom fails, and to know you aren't alone, to thrive in your everyday life.
Hey everyone, this is Rachel
And Christine.
We are so excited to have you with us today. We are joined by a special guest, Eva Klein. She is a certified sleep consultant. And so as moms of little ones, I am looking forward to hearing all the tips.
We're going to soak up all the information here along with you all.
I have a lot of questions myself. It's actually not my littlest one that I'm the most worried about, but my 2 and 4-year-olds still do not stay in their beds all night. Like, they are actually a lot worse than our littlest one. He has been great. And I mean, he can't get out of his bed yet. But I swear he sleeps for longer stretches than my older ones.
So we're going to get lots of advice.
Yes.
So
keep listening. If you have little ones that you just want to get them to sleep longer, or I was seeing, I've been stalking your website. I saw too that you help if, parents have kids that wake up way too early, just all the things.
Yes.
You can help people. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you guys so much for having me. And absolutely, sleep is, I think, one of my favorite things to talk about because it's so unbelievably important. But I think what's important to recognize is that it's so attainable if this is something that you want. We know what to do to get our little ones sleeping. It's just a matter of having the right plan in place.
Absolutely.
Well, that's like hope to my ears because quite honestly, sometimes I feel like, what have I done wrong? Like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. My kids are getting older and I feel like it's gotten worse. So that makes me feel better knowing that like maybe I'm just not doing things the right way. Maybe there's just practical things I can start doing.
There's another way. There always is.
Yeah.
Well, and I love you saying that you are passionate about sleep. I just personally enjoy sleeping. So we would love to hear how you got into sleep coaching. I mean, obviously we all enjoy sleeping, but this is now your passion and your profession.
Yes, my full-time gig. Basically, I happen to be a lawyer by training. I got called to the bar here in Ontario back in 2012, and I had a baby at the time. She was about 1.5 years. And then when I had my second daughter, about two and a half years after I had my first daughter, she was a terrible sleeper, unlike her older sister, who was this dream baby that made me look good. You know, those kids that make everyone go, wow, you must be such a great mom. And you're like, I know.
And a first-time mom, you're like, yep, I just really knew how to do this.
Totally. This just comes so naturally to me. And then 2 years and 4 months later, I'm like, oh, dear God. What do I do? I have no idea what I'm doing. Why won't this baby stop crying? And she was a very high needs, very difficult baby. And with high needs babies, sleep is often something that just doesn't come naturally to them. And I really began to suffer because just like everybody else, I need my sleep. I've always needed more sleep than average. And so when I'm not getting the uninterrupted sleep that I need, that all humans need for that matter, it was really taking a toll on pretty much every single aspect of my life, my mental health, my relationships. I mean, I was feeling very anxious. I wasn't patient with my 2-year-old or my husband or my baby for that matter. I didn't have the energy to take care of myself, to work out, to make myself healthy food. I wasn't able to go on a date with my husband because A, I didn't have the energy, and B, the second we we tried going on a date, we get a call from the babysitter that baby woke up and she can't get her back to sleep. And I began feeling really resentful of my baby, which is a terrible, awful, horrible thing to feel, because then you start to feel resentful of yourself. Like, what's wrong with me that I'm resenting this innocent baby that is clearly not doing anything on purpose to
That's probably
make
so
me
common.
crazy.
Yeah, lots of moms probably feel that way.
We actually, one of our previous guests, she came on the show to talk about her experience with postpartum depression. And a lot of it stemmed from like what you're saying, this resentment. She felt like there must be something wrong with her because she had, I like the phrase you've been using, high needs, because I don't want to say, high maintenance, because they aren't intentionally being needy. They're just newborns. And her son was very much like, your daughter just needed a lot, could not sleep well. She felt like she was nursing every 2 hours. By the time she was done, he needed it again. And yeah, like that is just so normal. So if you're a mom that's feeling that right now, like you are not alone.
No, it was seriously the most awful thing. And when I found myself at my car mechanic for the second time in a week and a half period, because I had managed to smash both of my car mirrors off of my car within a 1.5 week long period because I was so sleep deprived. And by the way, I had a perfect driving record up until that point, other than the odd car ticket. Yeah. And then within a 1.5 week long period, I smashed the left side mirror off as I was backing out of my garage for the 10,000th time. And then a week later, I smashed the right mirror off of my car as I was turning onto my street, and I miscalculated how close I was to a mail truck that was parked on the side of my street. That was my rock bottom, where I was at my car mechanic and the car mechanic is saying, "Didn't I just fix this last week?" And I said, "No, you fixed the left one. Now I'm here for the right one."
Oh my gosh. And I'm sure your husband was happy about that.
Oh my gosh. My husband's going, "Again? Eva, what's going on?" And I said, "I'm waking every 90 minutes all night long. That's what's going on." And so I had no choice but to make some changes. This wasn't sustainable for anybody around me, including myself. And so what's that?
I said, or your car.
No, or my car, or anybody. It was not sustainable for myself and anyone around me, yes, including my car. And so I had no choice but to make some changes. And I managed on my own to make the situation more manageable. I had to open up all these sleep books and figure out what the heck was going on. And when I did manage to make the situation more manageable, I kind of had this eureka moment and thought to myself, hey, why don't I get my certification and become a sleep consultant? Not to do this as a full-time thing, because I'm a lawyer. I'm not going to leave law because that's just crazy. I mean, who does that? But this should be something I do from the side, a fun, passionate side hustle of mine. And that allows me to really help families. It's way more rewarding than I had ever imagined. And then I'll see where it takes me. And so that's kind of in essence what happened. I mean, spoiler alert, I will tell you that when I started the program and began getting training, my baby regressed again, because let's be real, I really didn't know what I was doing. So I actually hired my teacher to help me get my baby sleeping for real this time. That was the best money I think I had spent as her mother. And then I ended up launching my business a few months later. And what started off as a side hustle turned into my full-time thing. So here I am today. And that was about 5 years ago.
That's awesome. And honestly, that's probably cool that you've used this service, because you understand too, like what your coach was doing on like a business level, just like the things she was doing to communicate with you and handling you with the client, versus just going into it and not really understanding things from the other end. Like, that probably was so helpful.
Totally. Being on the receiving end of assistance that I provide people day in and day out? Absolutely. I mean, I've been in all my clients' shoes. I know exactly how stressful it is to have a baby that just won't sleep. And I also know how amazing it feels to finally be able to get that baby sleeping and understand why something wasn't working beforehand and what we have to do to change it. Because it gave me that reassurance that my baby just isn't an alien that is incapable of sleeping. You see, here's the reality. The reality is that we are part of a very privileged generation of moms. I think that we are the luckiest generation. I think this is the best generation to be raising young kids because we can raise our kids well rested. And previous generations of moms did not have the insight and the knowledge and know-how that we have today that we can use to get our little ones sleeping. Back in the day, nobody knew anything about sleep. It was the blind leading the blind. It was just hope for the best. Hopefully your kid's a sleeper. If they aren't, oh well, you'll be tired for the next number of years. You're going to have to just figure it out. But today, there are solutions. We understand sleep science. We understand routines and schedules and sleep training and a proper sleep environment for our baby. We know what we need to do, what we can do to actually get a proper night's sleep if that's something that we want. So I feel so privileged to be part of this revolutionary movement of well-rested parents that has never existed before. So and one thing that I would just love to scream at the rooftops, it's that you don't have to raise your kids bleary-eyed and exhausted. You don't. You don't need to be a sleep-deprived mom or dad of babies and young children anymore.
That's so good to hear.
And I feel like a big difference, like you're saying, the generational difference here is that now moms like us are trying to figure out how to do it all. So we are looking for a solution as opposed to maybe other generations of women who stay-at-home mom was their thing and they thought it all just came with the job. Like, I'm going to be tired if I have small kids. And even now that I am home on maternity leave, like I don't even want to just sit on my couch and be tired. Like I want to feel awake to watch the shows.
Absolutely.
Clean my kitchen.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you, my mom was not one of those moms that was trying to do it all back in the day. You know, she was a teacher. She worked a couple days a week, you know, part-time, so that she could have more time at home with us. But gosh, she wanted sleep. I mean, she wanted a good night's sleep on a regular basis. Like I get my sleep needs from her and she gets her sleep needs from her parents. It's genetic. We call it the sleep.
Well, I feel like everyone needs good sleep. And like you were saying, it's not just so that you can like stay awake throughout the day and, you know, drive your car safely, but also for relationships. I feel like my husband, when we lay down at night, like when he wants to be intimate, is always like, why are you so tired? It'd be great if you like gave this some effort because I'll fall asleep while he's just rubbing my back or something. And I feel bad sometimes, but I'm like, what do you want from me? Like, I am exhausted.
Right.
And, you know, husbands don't always get it. Like, they don't always understand like how draining it can be just to be chasing around kids or like, you know, not having good naps one day. Like I need that time when my kids are napping to recharge. Like, you help with napping?
Yes, all of it. I mean, I'll tell you that actually when it comes to tackling a nighttime sleep issue, it's crucial to be assessing the daytime as well, because what happens during the day directly impacts what happens at night. And if a baby or a child is overtired because they didn't sleep during the day when they're supposed to be sleeping, then that can actually cause them to wake up at night. 12 hours later, you know, they didn't take their nap at 1:00 p.m., then that can cause an extended night waking at 1 a.m. because they're overtired. There's a very famous saying, sleep begets sleep. This was coined by Dr. Wise Bluth, who's a very well-known pediatrician and sleep expert. And the science backs that up completely. And then the opposite is also true, where we have sleep begets sleep. You know, good quality sleep produces more good quality sleep. Crappy sleep tends to produce more crappy sleep, which then tends to produce more crappy sleep. So you can easily find yourself in this vicious downward overtired spiral where you feel like there's no end in sight. And so in that kind of scenario, it's a matter of, rewinding, getting a sleep plan in place so that the child can catch up on sleep and then begin sleeping better.
I just told my mom that the other week because she asked about my youngest, Dorothy, like if she were to sleep less during the day, would she sleep more at night? And I told her I wasn't sure why, but I am pretty sure the opposite is true, that the more they sleep during the day, the more they sleep at night. So that's what my goal is. Not
Absolutely.
that how it all works, but
Absolutely. I mean, look, there is such thing as too much of a good thing. I mean, it does depend on the age of the baby. If a 4-year-old is napping for 3 hours during the day, then that's probably a little bit too much of a good thing. But a 2-year-old, for example, really needs to be sleeping 2 to 2.5 hours in the middle of the day to avoid being overtired. And if you're having sleep issues with your 2-year-old, then cutting the nap back to an hour is probably just going to make things worse.
Well, that's really good to know. And that brings me to some of my questions.
Yes.
We were wondering, first of all, if you maybe had like a couple of top tips for moms.
Top tips for moms. So tip number 1, which I think I kind of alluded to, but this is really, really important. And that is to get your little ones onto some kind of age-appropriate schedule or routine. And it's important, I'm emphasizing the word age appropriate, because getting them on a schedule might not get you anywhere if the schedule isn't adhering to your child's specific sleep needs. You see, a schedule for a 6-month-old is going to look drastically different than a schedule for an 18-month-old or a schedule for a 3-year-old. But at the end of the day, kids need that consistency. They need that structure so that their biological clock knows when it's time to wake up and when it's time to go to sleep. And then you want to make sure that those naps, or the nap, depending on how old the child is timed appropriately, that the child isn't up for a period of time that's too long, that's going to cause overtiredness. Because remember, what does overtiredness cause? Crappy nighttime sleep, right? Yeah. So if we want good quality nighttime sleep, we can't bypass the daytime schedule. You see, I find that a lot of parents, they don't know this. And then when it comes time to begin implementing a sleep training plan, they'll jump straight to the nighttime and they'll say, well, I don't really care about the daytime so much. I don't really mind if my kid has a nap so much during the day. I just want them sleeping at night. And it doesn't work like that. We can't have one without the other, because remember, if the daytime sleep is off, then that's what can be partially responsible for the nighttime being off to begin with. Right. So simply plunking your kid into the crib awake and beginning to implement some kind of sleep training method without having a sleep plan that's addressing the daytime could end up being disastrous. It could end up just not working. So don't overlook the importance of a schedule. And I'll tell you honestly why I love having a schedule. And again, I'm talking as a mom of a 9.5-month-old myself. The fact that my kid is on a schedule meant that when you and I were emailing about when to schedule this podcast interview, I was able to say, let's schedule it for around 10 o'clock, because my little guy goes down for a nap around 9:45. He'll be soundly asleep at 10 o'clock for at least an hour and a half. And I can live my best life and use my time efficiently and plan things appropriately and figure out when to take my little guy for music class and when I can go and run errands and when I can get things done at home versus out of the home, because he's on a schedule. And this way he's happiest because he's sleeping when he needs to be sleeping. I get a break, and then I can also plan my day appropriately. Without a schedule, how in the world could we have possibly scheduled this, right? We wouldn't have. I would have emailed you, I can chat in 5 minutes. Does this work for you? It probably wouldn't. Right? Yeah. So you can't live your life like that.
If you're one of our local listeners, we invite you to join us next month at Bell & Berry Summer Home and Style Market. It's happening Friday, July 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. and Saturday, July 20th from 9 to 3 at the Lampeter Cafe. The market is organized by our very own Christine and her event planning business, so I know it's going to include an awesome lineup of vendors. With the home and style theme, some of the items you'll find at the summer market include boutique clothing and accessories, jewelry, makeup and skincare products, along with fresh cut flowers from a local florist so you can grab some to treat yourself or pick up a small bouquet for your mom. Grab lunch or dinner at the cafe and browse through the amazing products and services the vendors will have showcased in the livery. It's sure to be a fun few days of shopping. We will be there, probably spending too much money, and we can't wait to see you too. We look forward to July 19th and 20th at the Lampeter Cafe, Bell & Berry's Home and Style Market. I totally get that. I wanted to ask, as you were talking about like the daytime schedule, what age would you say kids should still be taking naps until?
On average, I would say, there is a range. The average age that kids tend to be ready to drop their nap is somewhere between 3 and 3.5. Now, there are definitely children under age 3 that are ready to drop their nap. And there are definitely kids over age 3.5 that really need their nap during the day. Yeah. Otherwise, they can't make it. But I would say that that's about the average.
Okay. That's just interesting to know because my 4-year-old, our daughter, my oldest, just turned 4 in May. She's our best napper. Like out of her and her 2-year-old sister, I feel like she needs it and she enjoys the routine. Like she will tell me like she's tired and like she's very good about like
that's my girl. Time. I love that.
Yeah, like at nap time she'll go into her bed pretty willingly. Like she's better at nap time than she is at bedtime. Like at bedtime she'll do like I need a glass of water. Oh, I'm scared of the dark. Like every night there's something that she'll come up with. But
right.
Like, naps, she's great. Whereas my 2.5-year-old probably since like 1.5, I feel like honestly, since she's been like a pretty confident walker, she was climbing out of her crib at like 18 months. My kids are climbers. They walked. Wow. Walked at 9 months, and my
future circus performers there.
I don't know. My 9-week-old just started rolling over. So
wow.
Yeah. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I always thought that's part of why our oldest was a good sleeper because she was so active. But the same has not been true for her sister, who's equally active, but like just has fought us with napping. And so
I don't find there to be any connection. I hear everything. I hear my kid is so active. So maybe that's why she doesn't sleep. And I hear my kid is so inactive. Maybe that's why she doesn't sleep. Right. I hear, my kid is just really, really smart. And that's why he doesn't want to sleep because he's constantly thinking. And then I hear, my kid is also behind a little bit in certain gross motor skills. Maybe that's why. I hear everything. And I'm telling you, 1,500 families in, I have never seen any connection or correlation whatsoever between the active kids, the not so active kids, the advanced babies, the babies that are a little bit behind, and sleep. Because at the end of the day, as long as the child is healthy, they can learn how to sleep. Now, the one thing I do want to say about your 4-year-old is that you want to be careful that this amazing nap that she's giving you during the day isn't then causing her to fight you at bedtime. Because it might be a bit of a vicious cycle that you could be in where, she naps for 2 hours in the middle of the day? Is that
She's
how long?
Probably closer to like an hour and a half. Like hers is definitely not as long as it used to be.
Right. So, even an hour and a half, and then she doesn't want to go to bed until really, really late. And then as a result, she's exhausted because she didn't sleep enough at night. So then she needs that nap. And then she continues to fight bedtime. It could potentially be a vicious cycle. Now, if you're okay with her having a later bedtime and you keep that nap in the middle of the day, then hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if you really want to be able to clock out earlier and you want to be able to get her down earlier, you may want to start cutting back on the duration of the nap, just given her age. At 4 years old, the vast majority of kids are legitimately ready to be dropping their nap. And if you keep the nap, it can continue to cause bedtime battles for you.
This is so good to know.
Oh man, Rachel.
Now I'm going to have to just come up with, since I'm also, working at home some days, that just means that I need to come up with what are some quiet things we can do.
Yes.
Sister can still nap and you can be awake with mommy.
And you can get some work done.
Yeah, because I rely on that time, even if it's only an hour and a half. That's when I'll check my emails, things like that. And
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's when you can offer her some stories that she can read. She can, if she wants to lie in her bed and read some books, she wants to play with blocks or Lego really quietly, nothing too active. I mean, listen, she'll probably benefit from the quiet time as well, given that her body is used to sleeping during the day. But I might work towards, if you really want to be getting her down earlier, I might start cutting back on it. Maybe not necessarily eliminate the nap completely, a cold turkey, because then she may just be a disaster in the middle of the day. It's a little bit easier if you cut back on it. But I'll tell you, that's actually why I got rid of my middle child's nap when she was less than 3. She was 2 years and 10 months, if I can recall, because what was happening was, even if she had napped for an hour or hour and a half during the day, she didn't want to go to bed for 7 or 7:30 with my 4-year-old at the time, my 4.5-year-old, who was not napping anymore. And so she was tired by 7 o'clock. My 2.5, almost 3-year-old was not going to sleep until close to 9. And then what was happening is that she was still waking up for the day at 7. So she was getting 10 hours of night sleep with a 1-hour nap. Right? So that's 11 hours of sleep, which isn't really enough for a child in that age range. But then I experimented and I saw that on the weekend, if I got rid of her nap, she'd conk out like a light by 7 o'clock and then sleep around the clock until 7. So she was getting 12 hours of sleep. So the nap was in essence robbing her of 1 hour's worth of sleep over that 24-hour period. So that's when I said, okay, this is a no-brainer. We got to get rid of that nap because A, she's losing out on sleep, and B, I want to go back to clocking out at 7 o'clock again because I'm tired and I want my evening back. So that's what we did. We never looked back, and it went really smoothly.
That's so good to know. So that kind of led me to another question then. When you are talking about like the ideal numbers, like how much should a toddler be sleeping?
It depends on the age. A 2-year-old usually needs, again, these are approximates, but a ballpark 13 hours of sleep over a 24-hour period. So that includes, let's say, a 2-hour nap in the middle of the day and then 11 hours of night sleep. By the time the child gets to about 3 years old, we're usually looking at about 12 hours of sleep over a 24-hour period. So then that's when sometimes you can choose between having a nap with a shorter night or just have no nap with a longer night. Sometimes not. Sometimes, as I said, it's not just sheer math. Sometimes the nap can actually rob you of sleep over that 24-hour period. And then by the time the child gets to about 4 years old, their sleep needs usually go down to about 11 and a half hours. So we're not talking a big drastic difference between, let's say, a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, but it's still fairly noticeable.
How much sleep does a 33-year-old mom need?
8 hours a night.
Okay. So is that 8 consecutive hours?
Ideally. And listen, if you have a little baby, you're not going to get that. But don't underestimate what babies of all ages can do in terms of you being able to maximize their sleep, right? So maybe if you have a 2-month-old or a 3-month-old, your goal isn't to necessarily get them sleeping that 12 hours straight of sleep, but to be getting a 4-hour, 5-hour, 6-hour, 7-hour stretch. My 9-month-old was giving me 8 to 9 hour stretches of sleep by the time he was 6 weeks old. And yes, he was breastfed. That's always the first question I get. But was he breastfed? Yes, he was.
Well, it's something I realized which happened with my older daughter, and I don't think my newborn is ready for it, but when my older daughter, Nora, would wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes I would rush to nurse her, but at some point I started to give her the pacifier, and then that was all she needed, and she stayed asleep. And so I had to kind of figure out what might she need and break out of my routine. I don't think Dorothy is ready for it, but I'm just like, come on, give me one more hour. Cause I don't want her to then get used to needing to feed every
Right.
3 hours, which I think we're getting to that point, but
I've been waking up. I always know when my kids start sleeping more because I hate sleeping with a bra at night. So when they're so little, I don't really notice because they're eating every few hours. But I've been waking up with like soaked t-shirts because my boobs are leaking. I'm like, okay, this is a little uncomfortable. But that means it's like he's been sleeping much longer.
Yes. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I did have to get up last night to pump, but I was thinking at least Dorothy is still sleeping. So I'm upstairs with like my boppy pillow and my pump. And I'm like, which one am I going to need now? You know, my goal is to get her sleeping longer stretches. So
yeah, that's awesome.
She'll get there. But you shared one of your tips was a routine, and obviously some really good practical tips for napping and adjusting that schedule. Any other great tip maybe for newer babies or moms?
Yes, the little newborns. I'll tell you, with the same vein, when it comes to newborns and small infants, it is equally important to make sure that they don't become overtired. But it means, though, that looks very different. Preventing a newborn from becoming overtired looks drastically different than preventing a 2-year-old from becoming overtired. Newborns, and when I say a newborn, I mean a baby in, let's say, the 1 to 2 month age range, usually cannot be up for longer than an hour or so, 45 to maybe 75 minutes before they need to go back to sleep throughout the day. And ladies, this is huge because especially come those late afternoon, early evening hours, a very common occurrence that I find happens is that maybe this baby throughout the day was, eating well and sleeping regularly. And then comes 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6, 7, 8 o'clock. And baby at that point is just up. And we don't realize that the baby still needs to be napping at that hour, because if your baby cannot be up for longer than an hour, then it means that she can't be up for longer than an hour, whether or not it's 6 o'clock at night or whether it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And this can end up helping you avoid that witching hour in the early evenings when your baby is just crying and screaming nonstop, which I get is sometimes colic, but oftentimes colic isn't actually colic. Sometimes colic is actually overtiredness, where your baby has just been up for too long. Yeah. And you know what the solution is? The solution is get your baby in the baby carrier and let her snooze for 30 minutes at 7 o'clock at night. Don't be afraid of those late afternoon, early evening naps. Yes, you're not going to put your 2-year-old down for a nap at 6 o'clock, but your newborn that needs to be constantly sleeping to avoid overtiredness, you absolutely do that. I mean, when my son was in that age range, that was when I would take him for a walk. I would take him for a walk in those early evening hours because it was a really easy way to get him to sleep. And my then 7-year-old would come for a walk with me. And it was really cute because that was when she could get, some good quality mommy time. She loves to chit chat with me. That's her favorite thing to do, she just likes to talk. And so for 30 minutes, I would kill 2 birds with one stone. I'd catch up with my 7-year-old while getting my newborn to sleep and avoid having a disaster in those early evening hours instead.
Mm-hmm. That's really smart. I feel like I went through that a little bit like the first month with Robbie. He was sleeping for some good 2 or 3 hour chunks during the day. And then it was like he would kind of wake up around 4. And I feel like my husband's schedule can be unpredictable. So if he didn't make it home until 6, I was like, oh, I'm going to end up holding this baby during dinner again. He's going to be so fussy.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I just started either like feeding the girls ahead of time. I would feed them by 5 p.m. That way I could feed him. And then my husband and I would just eat together like 6 or 6:30. It was just adjusting some things. I just feel like that can be a busy time for the whole family.
Totally.
Whose schedules are, people are getting home or, the girls would be waking up from their naps between 3 and 4 and so they'd want to go out and play with the neighbors. And I feel like I just had to say, no, like we're going to have to stay inside for a little bit because mommy needs to feed the baby. And he's been much better. And I have found that it's because he's sleeping now.
Yes.
He's almost always sleeping when we eat, which is great because he like he needs that, but I never thought about it the way you're explaining it. And now I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yes. And I totally get that. Listen, it's called life, right? It's not going to always be possible for you to, hold your baby and do absolutely nothing while your other kids are running around killing each other. But this is where a baby carrier might come in. This is maybe where a swing might come in. This might be where when your husband gets home from work, he's then on baby holding duty. Get the baby to sleep and just hold baby in your arms so that baby can snooze for 30 minutes and then you can keep your other kiddos alive. But as long as I think it's a matter of a mindset shift and just something to actually be cognizant of, knowing how much you stand to benefit from ensuring that your newborn gets those early evening snoozes in. It avoids your baby having a massive meltdown. Everyone's going to be much happier. And so then, you can kind of end up working your life around those little mini snoozes that your baby might need, which again, sounds like it's one extra thing you have to worry about, but I'm telling you the benefits of that. My baby took tons of naps in the baby carrier as I was making dinner for my older ones, because my older ones still have to eat, but I just made sure that he needed to get that sleep in as well so that he wasn't going to be an overtired mess by 7 o'clock. It's massive.
I feel like a lot of the things you're sharing seem like, when you explain it, so reasonable, but I mean, until your kids maybe are like 16 or 17 years old, you're in this tunnel where sometimes it's hard to see outside of that, which I can understand is such a benefit to what you provide families, is showing them another option.
Yes.
And actually, I see a big correlation between what you do now and your lawyer job, because you're just figuring out solutions for people. And when they're in it, they can't see it for themselves. But I totally see how people need you. And it's such a benefit to moms at every stage.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's basically what I'm doing, is I'm providing plans. I'm providing solutions that are going to make some really massive changes in their lives.
Absolutely. I love that.
That's awesome. I love everything that you've shared so far, because like Christine said, I mean, I kind of had to learn for myself after like holding a baby throughout dinner for 3 weeks, like how to adjust things. But like from the get-go, it would have been amazing if someone had said, well, just feed him first. Make sure like you wake him by, maybe don't wake him, but like try to make sure that like you maybe prep dinner at this time so that like while it's cooking, you have time to feed him or whatever. Because I just felt like that time of day would become almost frantic for me. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like when are you coming home? Because the girls are crazy. And like I've shared, my girls are very active, love them. But
I hear you.
It can be a lot.
No, absolutely can. I mean, listen, my girls are a little bit older. As I said, one just finished second grade and the other one just finished, we call it senior kindergarten here. I don't know what you guys call it, kindergarten. She's going into first grade. Okay. And so they might not be toddlers, but they get in each other's faces quite often. And you know what it just meant? It just meant that, my husband would call and I would say, oh, okay, great. You're going to be home soon. Baby's going to have to nap in 20 minutes. And hey, guess what also is on? The Leafs are playing tonight. So here's what's going to happen. You get to come home and you can go and sit and watch the Leaf game while you bounce JJ in the bouncy chair so that he can sleep for 30 minutes, right?
Wait, who's the Leafs? The Maple Leafs?
The Maple Leafs. Oh, yes, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Thing.
Is this
hockey? It's a Toronto thing. We bleed blue and white around here. We're big. We're big.
Talking.
What's that? Hockey.
Okay, that's what I thought, but like I'm not a huge like sports follower.
I just was going with it. I'm like, I'm assuming this is some kind of athletic event that he's going to watch on TV.
Right.
Disclaimer.
Some professional sports game.
Our first international guest. She's from Toronto.
Yes, no, the Leafs are the Toronto NHL team.
Okay.
That my husband is a huge fan of. So so it just meant that if I knew that JJ would need a nap at a certain time, it was just like, okay, how's he going to get that nap in? Oh, so you can sit and watch the Leafs play while you bounce him in the bouncy chair and everybody wins.
That's perfect. And I love that you're thinking of ways to get dad involved, that like, it's not going to stress him that he's coming home and has the baby right away. Exactly. You're already telling him like, you get to watch the game and then you know, that gives you time to do what you need to do. Because I feel like I can stress Kyle out when I'm just like, here you go, here's the baby.
Right. Here's a screaming baby.
Crazy, but yeah, if I can tell him ahead of time and then come up with something that works for both of us, yeah, so much easier. So let's take a quick break, and then I want to know so much more, and we're going to be sharing some of our favorite things in the second part of our episode.
Great.
It's time for our review of the week. M. Sue Clementine said, I love these women. Such a chill podcast to turn on when you're cleaning the house or making supper or taking a long drive. Thankful for the honesty, the encouragement, the personality, and the fun guests. Thank you so much for the feedback. We just want to say we love reading all of your reviews. We read every comment each week, whether it's on iTunes or you're commenting on our Insta stories. Thank you for your participation and for helping us grow our community. Welcome back. We are so excited to be with a certified sleep coach today, Eva. I did this earlier. It's Eva. Eva is sharing with us all the tips and all the things. And we want to
we're eating this all up. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing just real practical tips with us.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Well, we have just been enjoying this so much. And one of the things I've been wanting to ask is, how do you juggle all of it? You sound like you have a lot on your plate with a family that's been growing and a business, and
yes,
don't do law anymore, but
no, I'm not practicing law. Oh my gosh. Honestly, you need support. That's the very first thing I would say. You can't do this on your own. The whole idea of supermom, superwoman, she's dead. She had Supermom had a nervous breakdown, right? That's not who we want to be following here. She had a nervous breakdown and died, right? that is not a path that we want to be following. She's a fraud, or she never really existed, because the reality is that it's just not possible to be able to do everything on your own and do it well and do it properly without something taking its toll. Mm-hmm. And usually when we're trying to do everything, it's the important things that are going to end up taking a toll. So thankfully this time around, I have first of all, I have a wonderfully supportive husband who is very hands-on, who makes lunches for the kids every day, who throughout the year was taking the kids to school in the morning, who comes home from work and helps out with dinner and helps out with bedtime, because, I'm working full-time as well. It might be from my home. And yes, I do have the luxury of being able to work in my pajamas sometimes, but it doesn't mean that I'm still not working. It doesn't mean that I'm not juggling a million things, a baby plus a growing business. It can be bonkers around here sometimes, but it's just not possible to be able to do it by yourself. So I have a wonderfully supportive husband. I also have wonderful parents who have recently retired, who live here in Toronto, in my city, who are around quite often, especially when I need them, for when I have to go and do carpool and the baby is sleeping, or I just need an extra pair of hands, that kind of thing. It's really, really wonderful. And I am in the midst of figuring out childcare arrangements for my baby. Which I always said I was going to do, one step at a time, right? When he was little, and thankfully I got him onto a really good sleep routine, and he is a very easy baby. I was able to work with him home because he was that baby that in between naps, after he was done feeding, he would sit in a bouncy chair and entertain himself for an hour, right? So I was thinking to myself, why would I need someone to take care of him if I could just have him right next to me and he's, playing around with his little toys above his head while I get work done. Now that he is 9.5 months, and he is crawling all over the place, and he is getting into things, and he's getting into, the cupboards, and he's opening and closing doors, and which is all age appropriate. It's what he's supposed to be doing at this age.
But it doesn't support my business. So now,
right, exactly. Now it's hard because I have to actually, make sure that I'm keeping him alive while running my business, which is way harder when you have a moving baby. So I've kind of hit, a new transition, I would say, where where now I'm going, okay, this is not working anymore. I need to figure something out. So I'm in the midst of figuring out childcare arrangements because, I do have a growing business. I have my coaching, plus I have a whole online sleep program that's really, really growing, that takes up a ton of my time in terms of the growth and in terms of supporting my members. So it's called the Sleep Bible program, in case that anyone is curious. And so that's, as a result, the current scenario for me just isn't working anymore with having him home all the time. So I'm looking for some part-time daycare arrangements for him right now.
We talk about that even in our lives, like, is there something we need to get help with, or is it like a cleaning person or a babysitter just to help maintain things? And like you're saying, your needs change as your kids get older.
Absolutely.
Whether you need more or less help or whatever that looks like for you. But I love that you're just constantly reevaluating that as your family and your business grow.
Yeah, absolutely. People would ask me, what are your plans with him when he was, 2 months old? And I'm saying, right now, I get a full day's worth of work with him at home because, he sleeps half the day. Yeah, I take breaks to go and feed him and change him. And then he just kind of chills for the most part. I mean, and yes, I fully recognize that that's temperament. If I had a more needy baby, I probably would have him in childcare earlier than that. But you just have to constantly evaluate and reevaluate and be honest. Because the honest truth is that having an older baby at home means that it makes it much, much harder for me to be able to run this full-time business. So childcare is wonderful.
That's so true. And I feel like I like what you said too. It all depends on your baby. I'm very much in, like you said, those early phases where I have a good baby. So I still bring him into the office with me. And I know that like at some point, like everyone loves when he comes in, and it's so great that he just gets to hang out with me because he just kind of is quiet and cute and like not really old enough to grab things and entertain himself, but like he just is happy to like look around, and he's getting more mesmerized by the things around him, which is fun, 9 weeks. So he doesn't just sleep all the time, but he's still quiet and he can still come with me, and childcare costs money. So for now, it's great that he can be with me. It also makes things easier because I do have a sitter a couple days a week, and it would be hard for them to have both my girls and a baby. So until he's able to do a little bit more, that would be a lot for either my mom or our sitter. So it just, you got to do what works for you.
Yeah.
And
I feel like we need to have a shirt that says, like you said, Eva, super mom is dead, or
yes, I love that,
is a fraud, and
super mom is in the psych ward.
And you just mentioned that it's being honest with yourself, and like, I think those two go hand in hand, because sometimes we as moms want to look like we have it all together. We see other moms that look like they have it together. Maybe their baby is just easier. It doesn't mean that they're doing all the things right. Like my older daughter was a great sleeper, not because I did anything, but because that's the way she was made. And even like last week, I was having some tough days and told a few people like, I'm not doing so great, and even told my husband. And it didn't mean I'm a bad mom or doing a bad job, but I had to be honest. And once you say that, or say I need help, it definitely is a really freeing feeling.
Absolutely. Because I'll tell you, as of now, the fact that I'm not getting as much work done during the day, it just means I'm staying up later to complete the work I wasn't able to get done during the day.
Yes. With your sleep, Eva,
first of all, completely ironic that here I am helping families get sleep, and then I'm up past midnight. No, it doesn't work. I mean, I absolutely practice what I preach. And so that's why I'm in the thick of I wouldn't necessarily say rebooting things, but tweaking things to make it more manageable for myself.
I can totally relate, because I feel like I do my best work at night, because that's sometimes just when I get a chance to do it. So for me, getting the childcare in place was key, because I was like, I can't keep doing this at night. Like I need to make sure that my days are when I'm getting things done. And I'm excited.
Have downtime.
Yes.
That you need downtime. How can you survive without it?
We need to watch The Housewives. Like, that's our common bond. Real Housewives.
The nice thing is that on the days that I am home, like I don't put as much pressure on myself to be doing like a lot of, I'm a website designer. So I don't put as much pressure on myself to be doing like the tough stuff. If I have time and both my girls nap on Tuesdays and Thursdays when I'm home, what I'll do is, maybe I'm getting things organized for a client. Maybe I'm gathering photos for their website that I'm going to be working on the next day. So doing like that organizational type stuff that's pretty easy. And it doesn't matter if I, have to close my laptop and hop up and do something, when I'm in the middle of designing, or when I'm online and I'm, oh my gosh, like I just closed my computer. I don't remember if I saved my changes, things like that, like
You've
stress me out. So I have just come to adjust what I'm working on as well, so that like it's more conducive to what my day is like.
I feel like you have more realistic expectations for yourself. Oh, the baby.
Oh, the babies. Yes. Disclaimer, for our past few episodes, we've just had to let people know we have babies with us now.
Right.
So
real life
wasn't us. The hiccups earlier, that was Christine's little one. And now they're both pretty sound asleep, but not fully asleep yet as we're talking about sleep. So let's dive into some of our favorite things. Because I would love to know if, well, for our listeners that have been listening, we always talk about like a favorite product or something like that. Is there anything sleep related product wise, or I don't know, something that you would recommend for parents?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the newborn babies who are still being swaddled, my favorite swaddle blanket is the Miracle Blanket. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Oh.
It was literally a miracle for my second child, the squirmy, needy baby who wouldn't settle. She was breaking out of the other swaddles that I was trying to use for her, but the design of the Miracle Blanket allowed for her arms to remain inside, and it helped her settle. And I find that just speaking to other parents of needy newborns, the Miracle Blanket, the design is absolutely fantastic. So that is definitely one of my favorite products out there. And then for the toddlers, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a product called the Grow Clock. There's another one called one's called the Grow Clock. There's another similar product called the OK to Wake Clock. I don't know if either of those, maybe they're sold in Canada, but not sold in the United States. Basically what they both are is they are clocks that are geared towards children who can't tell time. And they use color and imagery to show the child when it is nighttime and when it is daytime.
I've heard of products like that.
Yes. So here a really, really popular product sold here in Canada is called the Grow Clock, GRO, no W, just GRO clock. There's another one, as I said, called the OK to Wake Clock. And it just means that if it's 5:30 in the morning and your child isn't sure, is it morning, is it nighttime, they look up and they see what color the clock is. They understand that they need to be going back to sleep. Now, spoiler alert, your child might not care. And so that's another thing, right? Some kids care and they want to follow the rules.
Yeah, so what's the product that helps the kids care to follow the rules?
Right. There is no product for that.
Because they would just be like, well, I wanted to come into your room.
Right. Okay. So then that's where you then have to say, these are the rules, right? Just like for any rule that hasn't been adhered to during the day, right? If is it age appropriate to be telling kids you need to listen to the clock and stay in your bed until the morning? Absolutely. Right. That's a very age appropriate expectation. And so what do we do if during the daytime you have a rule that isn't being followed? You introduce a rewards chart of some kind so that you're rewarding positive behavior. And then at the same time, if they're still choosing to disregard the rule and say, oh, I don't care about the rewards chart, I'd rather do whatever the heck I want and not listen to you, then of course, they would have to be an age appropriate, effective consequence. So I'll tell you that when my oldest daughter was about 3 years old, even though she was my great sleeper, she went through a phase where she was waking up really early for the day. And even though we had a Grow Clock for her, so she knew darn well that it was not morning, but she was temporarily disregarding it. And so what that meant is that she did not get to watch Paw Patrol first thing in the morning. That was part of her morning routine. We pulled out the big guns.
Yep.
Took away Paw Patrol. And she was not happy about it. You see, for a consequence to be effective, it needs to be something that you're taking away that's valuable. And the fact that she was unhappy and threw a temper tantrum that morning made me go, yes.
You're doing your job.
I got her. All right. Because the last thing you want is for the child to say, I don't care. All right. I'd still rather wake up at 5 a.m. and not be able to watch Paw Patrol. But it took her a few days to experience the consequence for her to realize, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not worth it for me to disregard the clock. Maybe I should stay in my bed quietly because Paw Patrol is awesome. Right. And for me to have to miss out on Paw Patrol, that just stinks. So it really is a matter of figuring out a consequence that you can hopefully implement immediately. So again, her morning TV show, it was an immediate consequence. So she understood why she was experiencing the consequence, something that's going to mean a lot to her and something that she's not going to want to miss out on. So this was something that we would remind her of before tucking her in. And remember, Ramuna, what's going to happen if you don't stay in your bed quietly till the clock turns yellow? I don't get to watch Paw Patrol. Exactly. And she came around.
Well, and there's so much consistency too, which is helpful in all things. So just remaining on top of it and not tiring, because I'm sure that was hard and exhausting when she was throwing a temper tantrum.
Yes.
But you and your husband stick to your guns and
absolutely
learned.
Yes, absolutely. Again, it's just a matter of if you're having those boundaries, if you're instilling boundaries around something, it's really just a matter of remaining consistent with them and looking at boundaries that pertain to sleep as no different than boundaries that pertain to daytime behavior. You know, don't hit your brother. What happens if you hit your brother? There's going to be a consequence, right? You're going to get a privilege of some kind taken away. And the child might not be happy about it. But again, if the consequence is effective and the problem is, of course, behavioral and there's nothing else going on, then that is, in essence, what effective discipline is. So it's no different than a 2 a.m. temper tantrum. 2 p.m., 2 a.m. In their world, it's all the same. It's just exhausting for us.
That's the hard part. I even put my almost 2-year-old in timeout, and I know right now she doesn't really understand it. Like, she hits the screen on the fireplace and she knows not to do that. But if she does, I put her in timeout. I don't know how much that connection is there for her, but at least she's learning the routine of it. And just like you, when she sits down in timeout and she cries, I have the same thought. Oh, I'm doing my job, because now she's sad that she's there, because I was worried she wasn't upset about missing on like playtime. But I know she's learning. So when she gets old enough, I won't have to fight that battle of like, this is what timeout means, because she'll know.
Right. Absolutely. So I would just say that if you're dealing with toddler sleep issues, to not be afraid to put up some boundaries and to stick by them, right? You need to be spending the whole night in your bed. And if you come into mommy's bed, here's the consequence. I'm going to take you right back. That's the consequence, right? If you come again, I'm going to take you right back. And if you're really not going to cooperate, then you might have to miss out on Paw Patrol in the morning because you're not cooperating at 3 a.m. And they'll remember. They'll know exactly why Paw Patrol is getting taken away, even though what happened was a few hours earlier. So I just want to emphasize that while I love these types of products, these types of clocks, parents will often say to me, well, I tried giving my kid one of those clocks and it didn't work. And I'll say, well, what do you mean? Like there was something, the clock was broken? They'll say, well, he still woke up. And I said, oh, well, that doesn't mean the clock is broken. This doesn't mean it didn't work. It just meant your child didn't care. So, but it did work because he understood. It's one thing if the child's waking up at 5 a.m., legitimately thinking it's 7. It's another thing for him to be waking up, looking at the clock, and still waking up your entire house. Then that's when you move on to some kind of consequence because they're breaking a rule.
Yeah. Right. I like how you explain that too. Like it's no different than if it's a daytime behavior. And I feel like what I'm hearing is that I need to create some consequences for when my children come into my bed. But I feel like I've been doing it for so long that there are mornings I wake up and I'm like, when did you get here? Yeah. Sometimes I wake up and like both of them are in the bed. And usually it's Reagan, our oldest, will usually come in first. She's a very early riser. And then our middle one will usually make her way in a little bit later. They also share a room. So we went through a tough transition when they went to bunk beds of like, don't wake your sister up. If you wake up first, you just I think that's part of the reason they come to our room is because I said, you know, if you wake up, you can come to mommy's room. You don't wake up your sister and play in your room. Like,
oh,
right.
Now we just need to restructure the routine.
It just,
figure it out.
Needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe you might want to get one of those clocks and set it for, you know, pick a time, but that you're comfortable with, and make a new rule that you can't come into my room until this happens, depending on whatever clock you're buying. If you're using the Grow clock basically has a sun that is sleeping and the clock is blue. And then when you set it to morning, the sun wakes up and the clock is yellow. So if you were using that product, you would just explain, you have to stay in your bed quietly until the clock turns yellow. Then you can come out of bed and come into our room.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I need to invest in that.
Yeah.
What is your favorite product? I wanted to ask. Do you have something that you like rave about?
Mine has nothing to do with my children. I mean, kind of. We just got a new minivan.
Yes.
So I'm raving about my minivan, and maybe just as much as I love my minivan, I love that my husband was an SUV fan and I pulled him over to my side. Some might say I won the argument. I'm just thankful we agree.
You converted him, basically.
Yes. Because once he got into a van and test drove it, he was a fan. I guess it does have to do with our family and needing more stuff. And whenever we go, like, visit my parents, we need a pack and play and a stroller and all the things. Mm-hmm. And so I love just the storage space it has. And it just feels a lot more functional for our family and where we are. So
what did you get again?
We got a Chrysler Pacifica.
Okay. Yeah. So I have a Toyota Sienna, and I would agree.
Those are rated well too. I know that.
Yeah. Listen, for me, my favorite feature of my minivan is my automatic doors. I don't know what I would do without them. Now, granted, my kids are a little bit older, but just you wait. When your kids grow into those automatic doors, and it means that they can get in the car by themselves, buckle themselves in, and you don't have to get out. You're picking the kids up from school, and you don't have to get out of your van. You can just press the magic button and the doors open up and then they buckle themselves in and the door closes. I mean, this is especially huge for me because I live in Toronto where our winters are, it might as well be an Arctic wasteland. So for me to not have to get out of my car to buckle to help my kids get in the car if they can't open the door by themselves, it's massive.
Well, and we, yes, that was one of my arguments. And when I told my husband that, you know, if I have a van, the doors slide open. If someone's parked right next to me, I don't have to worry about my door hitting them because I've had to like turn the baby carrier sideways to get my child in the car. My husband at first said, just don't park near anybody. That's not always possible.
That's not how life works.
No.
That's like a Kyle remark. He'd be like, then why are you parking so close to people?
You know, sometimes people come and park next to you after you're already there.
Sometimes I have like a nice big spot. And then when I come out, I'm like, what a jerk. They're not even like in their space. Like they're over the line.
I know.
I should have, I wish there was a sticker that didn't say baby on board, but it said like toddlers on board.
Don't park near me.
Don't park so close.
Well, and so Eva, my almost 2-year-old can get in the car by herself now. And that has been so cool to see her do. I went to pick her up at daycare the one day and tried to teach her to touch the wheel, meaning stand near the car and touch the wheel while I put your sister in. And one day she just ran around the car into the like parking lot where cars were coming. So I ran after her and was like, this is not working. But now she can just climb in the car herself. And I have to then go put her in her car seat. But that has been huge. Safety and convenience. So
I agree.
Going to get Rachel to turn in her new car and get a van.
I just got a new car. I have a Toyota Highlander. So we have the third row. We have like the space of a minivan, but it doesn't have the doors.
But she has to open her own door.
You have to open your doors.
Like conveniences.
But we can fit all of our families in our cars. So that's the important thing. It's great.
Absolutely.
So what is your favorite thing, Rachel?
Honestly, one of my favorite things, oh my gosh, you're smiling.
These babies just learn to smile. It's
yes,
great.
It's so exciting when you're holding your baby and they're like smiling at you. Well, that's one of my favorite things. But also, I think as far as like babies go, I just shared this in like a mommy group that I'm in on Facebook, like the Lancaster PA moms or whatever. I think you're probably part of it.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it because, well, that's a favorite thing in itself. If you are like new to an area, I'm sure there's probably a Toronto moms group on
Yes.
Facebook. And it's really nice. Like, a lot of people will comment
exciting.
to say things like, I'm moving to the area, or, our kids are just starting school. Does anyone have a recommendation on XYZ? That's how I got information about like an eye doctor, where to take my daughter, like things like that. It's awesome. So join a group if you need help finding stuff, things to do for your kids or resources, because that's great. But someone just
Absolutely.
posted the other day, I'm registering for, I think it's their first baby. She's like, I'm making my registry. What are some must-have items? And one of the things that I always recommend to people is the DockATot. And I know I had mentioned this to you when we were emailing, and you said you can't endorse it. It's not technically meant for sleep.
It's not that. It's been recalled here in Canada. So I really can't. But it wasn't recalled in the United States. So you guys can say whatever the heck you want about it.
Yeah,
I've heard
like
really, really good things. I had a lot of clients that used it before it got recalled.
Okay.
And we're all really, really in love with it.
Has the Rock and Play been recalled in Canada?
No.
It
was not recalled here. So I can talk about the Rock and Play.
It's been recalled here, and my daughter likes it. So
she's in it right now, actually.
Yeah,
right. My understanding is that it wasn't recalled here because it was never advertised as a sleeper.
Okay.
It was always advertised as some kind of, chair or device for babies to be in, but not necessarily for sleeping purposes.
Yes, my daughter is using it right now as a chair, so it is safe.
Right.
But
the DockATot is
Rachel loves it.
Similar in the whole recall thing, because I'm sure there have, just like anything, there can be issues if you're not watching your child or using it properly. But
absolutely,
for us, we have loved it. We got it for our second child. She was not as good a sleeper as the first, and so we were just struggling. For her, she could not be like away from me. So we had our oldest in a bassinet. She'd quickly moved to her crib by like 2 months or so. And I think our second, I was joking with Kyle recently that, oh my gosh, we couldn't get out of our room for like 8 months. And I thought I was exaggerating. And then I got a Facebook memory thing pop up, and it was a picture of like the dog. Like, I take a lot of pictures of my dog, but he was in our room, and in the background was the bassinet.
Oh my!
And I was like, I'm not exaggerating. She would have been like 8.5 months old in this picture.
Oh my God.
So we had invested in the DockATot so that she could sleep right by us. It's just like a little bed. They call it, like, I think they do call it a co-sleeper. Maybe they aren't allowed to use that terminology, but that's kind of how we use it. We have a queen, so we don't actually keep it in our bed. But when we have a king, if we go on vacation or if we travel, it's literally, a king for us is so big that it can just be right in between us, and plenty of space for baby. We keep it right up against the headboard so that, the blankets aren't coming near baby or anything. But it just hugs them, kind of keeps them right in one spot. So as soon as they're able to roll, not safe, similar to Rock and Play, obviously, if your baby's rolling around, it's not a safe place for them to be anymore. But we found that when our babies were, for our second and for Robbie, the one I'm holding right now, when they're swaddled, it just provides like a really cozy little area for them to lay and feel protected. Like, we started with her like right next to the bed. We had it, and we got a Kiko. I think that's how you say it. Is it Kiko or Chico?
I think it's Kiko, the car seat brand.
Yeah, the car seat brand. They also have like a really cute little, it's called the Lula Go bassinet. And it's just basically just a very plain rectangle, breathable on all sides. So that is for sleeping. It is safe. I can recommend that. But it's also large enough that a DockATot fits right into it. So when they're unable to roll around, that's how we set it up. We set it right in the bassinet, and that way it's just like extra
nice
cushioning around them. Basically, it's like a little cocoon, and we love it because you can just put it in the bag and it travels with you really easily. It's much smaller than having to pack and play or something. So again, I can't endorse it for sleeping, but I'm also not a sleep coach. So
we can say what we like.
We can say what we like, and I'm just saying I really like it. I would say it's worth the expense if you have a baby that just needs that, cocoony being held feeling, because some babies are more difficult, like cannot be put down. And we tried putting Rowan in her crib so many times, and she just
did not like it.
She just wouldn't stay asleep. That was the thing. We'd put her in there even, like we'd put her in sound asleep and she would wake up within like 20 minutes. So that's my favorite
You
thing.
do what works.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I wanted to ask, where can people find you and how can they sign up or request a consult with you?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So they can head over to mysleepingbaby.com. That's got all my information on my coaching services, on my online sleep program, the Sleep Bible. If you are looking to get a head start on getting your little one sleeping, I would highly suggest downloading my free ebook, which takes you through my top 7 sleep tips that you can begin implementing immediately to get your little one sleeping. It's a very short ebook. Don't want to overwhelm people at the sound of that term, but it can absolutely get you off on the right foot. And I've had many people that have gotten great results just from following my top 7 tips.
That's awesome.
Nice.
And I think the benefit of a consultation, if you're kind of past that point of preparing and you're like, what am I doing wrong? I mean, just in talking to you now, like when you talk to someone one-on-one, they can tell you this is what I'm doing during the day. These are the exact steps that I am taking. And then
absolutely.
Well, red flag here, like this is where you could do something differently. So yeah, I think that at least for me, when I was expecting for the first time, I had no experience with babies. I probably would have been like, why would you even need a sleep coach? Is that just something like, rich, fancy people use? Like,
But after day 1 of your baby, you're like, oh Lord, help me. How do I get through this?
Yeah, so valuable.
Absolutely. That's where we come in.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Your tips are so practical, and it was just so fun getting to talk to another mom and a businesswoman. And yeah, you're just so delightful.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
And where can people find you on Instagram or
My Sleeping Baby is my handle.
All right. And it's because you have a sleeping baby.
Yes, 3 of them.
Well, thank you again. And moms.
Yes. Thank you. All the moms, whether or not your baby is sleeping, you are doing amazing.
Thank you so much for listening today. You are a part of a growing community of moms, business owners, and women who are here to encourage and inspire. You can connect with Rachel at Rachel Klein Creative on Instagram or rachelkleincreative.com. To keep up with Christine and her latest events, follow her business journey on Instagram at Bellenberry Co. And if you want to be first to know about upcoming guests and giveaways, sign up for the Thrive Podcast email list today. Simply visit rachelkleincreative.com/The Thrive Podcast or follow at The Thrive Podcast on Instagram. If you've enjoyed listening this week or you've already added our show to your favorites playlist, we'd love for you to write us a review on iTunes. Your support and positive feedback allows us to keep encouraging moms and business owners each week.